Banania. Nerds in Paradise. It was late September, and days were getting hotter on the island of Banania, with the promised cooling trade winds hardly bothering to arrive at all. Manta Ray Bay Resort's feeble air conditioning units failed to make any impression at all. So the Digibeet team decided to do something about cooling down the tech node, which was their part of the resort. And so they developed a simple evaporation system based on a box filled with straw, soaked with water, and 2 computer fans to suck the air through. These units they positioned at strategic points around the tech node. Meanwhile, since becoming assistant to Jemmy Dobson in her kitchen, Herbert McNevis lost no time in sharing his passion for robots with members of the Digibeet team. Spending much time asking them innumerable questions, and with remarkable speed, Herbert developed a firm, if fundamental, understanding of cybernetics. His remarkably rapid grasp of technology, coupled with his equally remarkably overactive imagination, led to Herbert pitching his idea for a robotic barista to Nigel Nickleby, Digibeet's co-founder and lead engineer. Sadly though, Nigel wasn't such an avid coffee drinker as Herbert was an impassioned barista, so the concept sank slowly out of sight. The seed was sown though, and recognizing an all too familiar passion, Nigel suggested that Herbert cease assisting Jemmy in the kitchen and become a fully fledged intern, working directly under his leadership. Herbert was of course delirious with excitement, which was more than could be said for poor Jemmy, who had grown to rely on Herbert's help and warmly accustomed to his constant chatter. Herbert, though, was oblivious of Jemmy's pain and threw himself eagerly into working with Nigel in what they both dramatically called their secret little project. Meanwhile, the new straw-based evaporating air cooling units worked very nicely indeed, thank you very much, reducing the temperature in the tech node to something nearing bearable. Until they stopped working, that was. On closer investigation, it appeared that, confusingly, the straw in the outdoor part of the units had disappeared completely. After some discussion and an appropriate amount of conspiracy theories, including extraterrestrial disintegration cannons, the team finally came to suspect that someone had copied their idea and were stealing straw for their own cooling units. Well, after fruitlessly visiting some local residences and several known ne'er-do-wells, and subtly inquiring into their experience with the unseasonably high temperatures, the team decided that the simplest way to solve the mystery was to set a trap. But Nigel and Herbert had a much more sophisticated solution to that little problem. So it was with much pride and a mind-numbingly extensive explanation that Nigel and Herbert revealed their top secret project to the rest of the team. And Robo Dog was born. Or at least his power pack was activated. He did indeed look ferocious, at least twice the size of Banania's many stray canines, with large pointy ears, long scraggy fur, and glowing green eyes. A worthy adversary, for the straw bandits, if ever there was one. Unfortunately, despite the great trust placed in him, Robo Dog failed to apprehend or even scare away the thieves. The very first night the cooling units were refilled with fresh straw, it all miraculously disappeared again, right under Robo Dog's impressively long nose. The plot thickened. A few uneventful days later, Robo Dog was padding about in the Technode offices, honing his superior sniffing abilities to track down a small mouse, cunningly hiding under a desk. When at that very same moment, Slow Joe, Paige Payne's pet python, was also pursuing the same unfortunate rodent. Coming from different directions, both hunters chose the very same moment to round the final corner, ready to strike. And that is how they both came to be frozen in mid-strike, looking at each other with bewilderment and apprehension. This was all much to the advantage of the small mouse, of course, who gratefully took the opportunity to make her exit. But on suddenly meeting this strange creature face to face, Joe immediately reared his head up and hissed loudly. Robo Dog, whose AI component was learning to copy people's actions and reactions, naturally did exactly the same, rearing up to a sitting position with his paws at his side, hissing loudly. Now Joe was used to people either screaming hysterically and smacking him over the head with whatever was handy, or stroking him kindly and telling him what a silly snake he was. He was also used to the occasional little animal, either attempting to escape as quickly as possible, or quivering with frozen terror and awaiting its soon-to-be executed fate. But this strange creature did none of the above. In fact, it did exactly what Joe did, which, along with being enormous and smelling strangely mechanical, confused Joe mightily. The nearest thing he'd experienced to this was when he met his own reflection in a mirror, and that had given him a bruised nose when he tried to attack it. But because this strange creature didn't seem inclined to attack him, Joe tried an experiment. Slowly, he waved his head from side to side, which normally resulted in any member of the rodent family freezing to the spot and squeaking in terror. This creature, though, copied Joe's movements perfectly, calmly swaying from side to side. Then, when Joe bobbed his head up and down, so did the creature, with obvious enthusiasm. And so a great bond was formed. Joe had made a new friend, who, though big, hairy and smelling strange, seemed happy to do whatever Joe did, which seemed to Joe to be the perfect recipe for a friendship. And so the potentially ferocious guard dog turned into a big, soft pet, which had a tendency to slide around on its tummy, weave its head from side to side, with its tongue darting in and out, and occasionally climb trees. Although he was sent out to roam the surrounding grounds at night, Robo Dog's attitude did nothing to solve the problem of the disappearing straw. Until one evening, Fritz from Dam was having a hard time dropping off to sleep in the heat, and decided that he might just as well stroll about outside in the comparative cool. And as he wandered down the path behind his office, he stopped in mid-stroll at a strange sight. 3 large, four-legged creatures were lumbering purposefully towards the air conditioning unit. 2 were moving steadily with heads erect and a sense of determination, followed by the third animal, which was of a somewhat different shape and size. And this creature had its nose to the ground, zigzagging and snuffling loudly. Ha! At last the villains were uncovered. Ollie and Wally, Manta Ray Bay Resort's resident donkeys, followed and unhindered by none other than Robo Dog, who was of course designed to catch criminals, not long-term local resort residents. Well, having discovered Ollie and Wally's appetite for straw, and never being one to let an opportunity slip, Nigel, assisted by his team, developed a good old-fashioned turnstile. The harness was connected to a gear system, which in turn propelled, well, 2 propellers really. One to blow cooling air into an octopus of pipes connected to the cooling system's straw-filled boxes. The other propeller fanned the donkeys, who both suspected that no matter how fast they ran, they could never quite catch up with the tantalizing bunch of straw dangling before their noses. But neither donkey was willing to admit that they had been fooled, so they dutifully continued to pursue the ever-receding bundle of straw. Now, in spite of a growing scepticism at being a remarkably tame guard dog, Robo Dog's reputation got a serious boost a few quiet, moonless nights later. Apart from the noise of the insect population's nightly partying, the constant creaking and rhythmic slow clip-clopping of the donkey-powered air conditioning system, not a sound was out of place, as 2 hooded figures crept stealthily through Manta Ray Bay Resort's grounds towards the tech node itself. Intent on relieving Digibeet of some of its expensive tools and a computer or 2, the thieves were silently congratulating themselves on not having set off the alarm system. As they moved closer to the tech node, though, a new noise gradually introduced itself to their ears. It was hard to identify, but it sounded somewhere between a sniff and a hiss. This was suddenly superseded by a noise like vegetation being trampled down at high speed, mixed with an even heavier hissing. And worst of all, it was swiftly heading in their direction. Totally unnerved by whatever it was that was all too quickly approaching, one of the thieves broke thieving protocol completely and switched on his powerful flash lamp. To their horror, out of the surrounding shrubbery burst what looked like a gigantic, hairy dog. But this creature wasn't moving like any normal dog. With its nose to the ground, it came forward, slithering along with its forepaws stretched out before it and zigzagging, well, like a giant snake, really. And to make the effect all the more harrowing, its tongue was rapidly darting in and out of its enormous, hissing mouth as a strange electronic light glowed in its eyes. Well, normally ready to deal with even the most ferocious guard dog, both seasoned thieves screamed with terror, dropped their bag of burglary tools, and ran for the surrounding fence, much faster than they ever thought humanly possible. And even though it had taken them significant effort to climb in over the fence, this they both now leapt over with an enormous adrenaline-powered leap, leaving their monstrous pursuers sliding to a slithery halt